Hi, Scone Mason here. I've had a little time off since my last video. My wife and I were closing on a house, and then we had to move into the house, and now we're in the house. So this is a brand new video from a brand new house. We're very excited, and I thank you for your patience waiting for my next video, because I've obtained about another over 100 subscribers since my last one. I'm now at about 330. So welcome to all the new folks, and thank you very much for persevering with me. And here's my latest video. Many professions have their own languages, spoken and written, such as medical nomenclature, mathematical symbols, scientific notation, police radio codes, or military acronym-based language. Specialized groups can communicate quickly without long explanations by developing their own jargon, even to the point that they create a language that only members of the group understand. This speeds up communication, but also imbues the group's members with a feeling of exclusivity, and it creates a barrier against non-members understanding members without permission. All religions have their own nomenclature, which is used to exclude those who don't follow the religion. Members speak to each other in code that makes them feel special, as if they and only they are privy to special knowledge, or even special powers that you must join to obtain. If you swallow the dogma, you are given the enlightened nomenclature. In some sects, such as Scientology, you literally pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to the church before you are given the final details of the religion and all the secret terminology that goes with it. It is this use of coded language that makes communication with religionists very difficult sometimes for non-believers. When someone wishes to discuss or argue a point, but they center their arguments on terminology that is not mutually agreed upon, then the argument is pointless in both directions. In my last video, I explained what science was and why use of the scientific method was the only way we have of finding things out. The desire of religionists to keep arguments restricted to the realm of their own religion's nomenclature requires them to put their opponents in terms that allow the nomenclature, and by that association their own groupthink process, to work in the way that they are accustomed to, which is dogmatically. They are not attempting to understand the opposing viewpoint and make relevant points against it using evidence. They simply want their opponent's two-dimensional image tacked to the wall of their den so they can pelt it with the familiar darts of rhetoric. Being able to use their coded labels allows them to toss those darts without looking and throw from inches away. It is when religionists must confront the complexities of reality that they hide behind the smokescreen of their nomenclature. By using words that have meaning only in their group, they can construct arguments that stay within the boundaries of their dogma and cannot be argued unless the opponent is willing to use the nomenclature, which lends credence to the dogmatic argument even when the opponent does not intend that. Here's an example of this from my personal life. I had been running on the track where I work, and on my way back to the gym, I saw two young men with a table set up and a sign that said, "Religion is for the weak." And I thought they were atheists. So I went to talk to them. It turned out they were Christians, and their sign meant something like, "We're all weak and all need religion to be strong." So right away, they had used their own nomenclature to fool me into talking to them, which was their plan, to draw people to their table to proselytize to them. We had a brief exchange during which we established that they were Christians hoping to preach and convert me, and that I was an atheist who had made a mistake, and against my usual policy of choosing not to argue with lost causes, I engaged the two in a bit of back and forth about the existence of their God. The primary proselytizer was waving a Bible around, so I chose the tack of pointing out that the Bible was written and published by men, that it contained no knowledge of the actual nature or function of the earth, despite the book's alleged authorship by the very creator of that planet. These words flew past the two without much response that related to my point, but finally the Bible waver said, "Okay, but you have to admit that if Jesus rose from the dead, He is the Son of God. This pronouncement froze me in my tracks. Not because he had confused me or forced me to admit such a thing. I was frozen because nothing he said was based in reality. I had no response because every element of this statement was constructed of the dogmatic nomenclature of his religion, and he was attempting to get me to compress my own widescreen technicolor thoughts into the compact little black and white television set idea he was presenting. The answer to his question would have required an enormous allowance of assumption on my part, all of which I disagreed with, but the wording of his question did not allow for opposition. You have to admit that if Jesus rose from the dead, he is the Son of God. I began slowly, taking my time to make sure he understood my answer. I don't have to admit anything I don't believe based on something else I don't believe, but the problem here is one of language, I said. He repeated his demand of what I must accept. The problem I have here is with your nomenclature, I said. You're imposing ideas on me based on false assumptions. He calmed down and asked me what I meant, and I explained it thusly. Before I could admit anything resembling what you are suggesting, I'd have to first believe there is a God, believe that it is the Christian God, believe that he had a son or is capable of having a son, and that coming back from the dead was not only possible, but that the action alone somehow proved that whoever did it was the indisputable son of this alleged God, and I believe none of those things. Therefore, I don't have to admit that if Jesus came back from the dead, he is the Son of God, because I don't believe in God. There was no Jesus outside mythology, and no one has ever, nor is ever likely to, come back from the dead, and even if they did, that doesn't prove in and of itself that that person is the Son of God, of your God, the Christian God. At this point, it got a little contentious, and it was obvious that our conversation was going no further, so I thanked them for their time and ran off. Just as much my fault as theirs, it just wasn't, we weren't communicating. Resurrection, holiness, sin, sanctity, salvation. These words mean nothing to me. They have no representation in reality for me. They are of the nomenclature of the mythology and have no reference in the physical world that I can relate to. These words are a smokescreen, a euphemistic cavalcade of abstractions that have their basis in civilizations that were devoid of reason and scientific thought. These words are held up as having some special magical meaning or moral superiority, but they are nonsense to those who do not adhere to the grimy old Bible. If you desire to make a point about religion, I suggest doing it in terms that are not dependent upon belief. This is the main reason I won't even engage most religionists unless by accident. Nothing they say really makes any sense. And when they are arguing from a religious perspective, they might as well be Charlie Brown's teacher. Blah, 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 blah. This is why words are so important. And if you're trying to communicate, you have to want to make sense with someone outside your sphere. When all you really want to do is preach at people and not communicate with them, demanding that they accept your beliefs or be punished, then inventing words is an easy way for you to sound like you know something they don't. The problem is that saying you know something they don't doesn't demonstrate that. Going on about things that only you understand constitutes a conversation with yourself that no one else hears. This kind of linguistic exclusivity finds its pinnacle in the Christian sect known as Pentecostals. During their rave-ups, they get all excited and begin mumbling absolute gibberish that they deem is speaking in tongues, based on a story in the Bible about the Tower of Babel. And babble they do. There are several YouTube videos of this phenomenon, which amounts to freaked out Pentecostals shouting gibberish that sounds like languages lampooned by South Park's Parker and Stone. All kinds of stories are told about someone overhearing this and claiming they were speaking perfect Japanese or some such thing, but none of the recordings I've seen portray anything other than people trying to sound like something amazing and special is happening by exhibiting lunacy and damning those who do not see the emperor's clothing or hear the emperor's speaking. Speaking in tongues is bullshit of the first magnitude and exemplifies the most extreme attempt at exclusion of non-believers via language. In this case, if God comes in your mouth, it's best to spit rather than swallow. I'm Scone Mason. See you next time.